The afternoon had started like any other, the city buzzing with impatience under a pale, unforgiving sun. Traffic clogged the main avenue, horns bleating in short, angry bursts, while pedestrians threaded themselves through crosswalks as if the painted lines were suggestions rather than rules. Officer Daniel Mercer stood near his patrol car, vest heavy on his shoulders, radio crackling with half-heard updates. He'd been on duty for 10 hours already, running on burnt coffee in the thin hope that the shift would end without incident. He didn't know it yet, but the street was about to remember his name. The call had come in as a minor disturbance, a young woman arguing with a shop owner, voices raised, a crowd forming. Daniel approached with the automatic confidence of routine, his posture straight, his face set into the neutral mask he'd learned to wear years ago. The girl couldn't have been more than 19 or 20. She stood her ground, hands shaking but clenched, eyes bright with anger and something else, fear maybe, or exhaustion. Words flew back and forth, sharp and careless, drawing attention like sparks near dry leaves. Daniel tried to assert control, his voice firm but strained. He asked for ID, for calm, for cooperation. The girl talked back, her frustration spilling out faster than she could contain it. People slowed to watch. Phones appeared, held casually at first, then more deliberately. Daniel felt the pressure rising, that old familiar heat in his chest, the sense that the situation was slipping beyond his grip. He'd handled worse, he told himself. He just needed to end this. Then it happened. In a moment so fast it barely registered, his hand moved before his judgment caught up. A sharp sound cracked through the air as his palm struck her face. The street went silent, as if the city itself had flinched. The girl staggered back, eyes wide in shock, her hand flying to her cheek. For half a second, Daniel didn't even understand what he'd done. His arm hovered awkwardly, frozen in the aftermath. The silence shattered into noise, gasps, shouts, a chorus of disbelief. Phones were no longer casual, they were weapons now, lenses trained on him from every angle. The girl didn't scream or cry, she just stared at him, something breaking and hardening in her expression at the same time. That look hit Daniel harder than the sound of his own strike. He felt the blood drain from his face, the weight of the moment crashing down all at once. Training kicked in too late. He tried to speak, to explain, to say something, anything that might rewind the last 10 seconds. But there are moments you can't talk your way out of. His radio crackled again, distant and irrelevant. Somewhere in the crowd, someone shouted, "That's assault!" Another voice yelled his badge number. The shop owner had stepped back, suddenly irrelevant, while the girl stood trembling but upright, refusing to disappear. Daniel's mind raced, flipping through consequences like pages he didn't want to read. Internal affairs, suspension, headlines. The word video echoed louder than all the rest. He knew how this ended because he'd seen it happen to others. He'd watched careers unravel over far less, watched men pack their lockers with stiff faces and forced jokes. And now it was him, standing in the middle of the street, exposed. Backup arrived quickly, lights flashing, sirens slicing through the crowd. A senior officer pulled Daniel aside, eyes sharp with a mix of anger and disbelief. "What the hell were you thinking?" he hissed. Daniel couldn't answer. He felt hollow, like the core of him had been scooped out and left behind. The girl was escorted to the sidewalk, medics checking her face, someone offering water she didn't drink. She kept her gaze forward, jaw tight, dignity stitched together by sheer will. By evening, the video was everywhere, cropped, slowed, replayed from 3 angles, then 10. Comment sections filled with outrage, grief, fury, and grim satisfaction. Daniel sat alone at his kitchen table, uniform folded on the chair like it belonged to someone else. His phone buzzed nonstop, missed calls from colleagues, messages from family, notifications he couldn't bring himself to open. On the TV, his face appeared blurred, his actions unmistakable. Sleep didn't come that night.
Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the girl's expression at the exact moment his hand connected. He thought about the lectures he'd given rookies on restraint, on professionalism, on the trust between police and public. He believed in those words. He still did. That was the worst part. He'd betrayed not just the girl, but the version of himself he'd spent years trying to be. The official notice arrived 2 days later. Immediate suspension pending investigation. It was written in careful, bloodless language, but the meaning was clear. His career, at least as he knew it, was over. Even if the department somehow kept him, the street wouldn't. Trust, once broken that publicly, doesn't mend easily. Daniel signed the papers with a hand that shook despite his efforts to steady it. He attended the disciplinary hearing weeks later, sitting stiffly while the incident was described in clinical detail. The girl was there too. She spoke calmly, without drama, describing the humiliation, the fear, the way the slap echoed long after the sound faded. Daniel listened, eyes fixed on the floor, each word another weight added to his chest. When it was his turn, he stood and apologized. Not the defensive kind, not the polished press statement version, but a raw, inadequate apology that didn't ask for forgiveness. He knew he wasn't owed any. Outside, reporters waited, hungry for a quote, a look, a crack in his composure. Daniel said nothing. He walked past them, shoulders hunched, suddenly just another man in the crowd. The uniform that once gave him authority now felt like a ghost he couldn't quite shake. Months later, the city moved on, as cities do. New stories replaced old outrage. But for Daniel, time moved differently. He took a job far from law enforcement, something quiet and anonymous. Some days, people recognized him anyway. Some days, they didn't. He learned to live with both. The memory of that afternoon never fully left him. It became a permanent fixture, a reminder etched into his sense of self. He thought often about the girl, not in a heroic or self-pitying way, but as a real person whose life had intersected with his at its worst point. He hoped she healed, hoped the moment didn't define her the way it defined him. He understood now that power wasn't just something you held, it was something you were trusted with. And trust, once shattered in the middle of a crowded street, leaves an echo that lasts far longer than a slap. In the end, Daniel didn't lose his career because of a camera or a crowd or public pressure. He lost it because in one unguarded second, he forgot who he was supposed to be. And that realization followed him everywhere, quiet and relentless, a lesson learned too late, but never forgotten. For more thrilling, emotional, and twist-packed stories, don't forget to subscribe, hit like, and share with friends who love surprises.